Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we are having our Planning Commission meeting a little differently today. We will be doing this, via Go meeting, and so hopefully you've all had a chance to register. So I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We can all turn on our mics and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Shelley, if we could do a roll call.
With liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Krushat?
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Mendoza?
Here.
Commissioner Walker?
Here.
Vice Chair Dixon? Vice Chair Dixon? He's here. Chair Paul-Hannah?
Present. So, Jason, if you could hear me, maybe you could just go ahead and jot down in the chat that you're present so we can have that on record. You might have to use the dial-in as well. I was having some trouble connecting from my laptop, so if you need to do that. Okay, so go ahead and continue. So these proceedings may be viewed on demand at the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream the meeting by going to City website and clicking the Meeting Agendas link. Public comments. This is a time for the public to address the Planning Commission on the issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments should be directed to the Chair of the Commission and shall not consist of personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There's a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you fill out the address slips and turn them into the Planning Commission Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act state law from taking action of discussing at length items not included on this agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration on that agenda item. Moving on to our commissioner comments and reports and meetings attended.
Leslie, hang on. Did we have any public comments, Eli?
If any members of the public wish to address the commission, please raise a virtual hand or enter your comments into the chat window.
Thank you, Elijah. So I'll ensure by officially opening up public comment, and I'll wait for Elijah to let me know if he sees anybody before closing.
We have no hands raised and no questions entered.
Seeing that we have no public comment, I'll go ahead and close that public comment time. And now we'll go on to commission comments. Thank you, Director, for helping me out with that. Let's start with Mendoza.
I have no comments.
Thank you, Mr. Krushat.
I, along with Mr. Max Walker, attended the last meeting of our special meeting for the VHR ordinance. That'll be coming to the Planning Commission with their recommendations, and we get to work the whole issue again.
Thank you. Max Walker?
Yeah, I'll second what Jim said. The VHR special committee was quite an experience, and I think it's just going to continue. So we'll continue that when we get it.
Great, thank you. And Jason Dixon, are you able to jump online?
It's currently showing the vice chair offline, so I'm not sure if he's having an issue reconnecting.
Okay. And I have not attended any meetings since our last that I can think of. I might have attended some, after our last planning commission meeting, I did attend the lighting just very quickly. I think it was that tree lighting ceremony might have been our last meeting. But thank you to Mr. Krushat and Mr. Walker for getting our vacation home rental, meetings and committee going along, and we look forward to that. So we'll move on to the consent calendar, and we have the approval of minutes from August 17th, 2021. Everybody have a chance to look over everything?
Commissioner Mendoza, I move to approve.
I have a motion. Do you have a second?
This is Commissioner Krushat. I second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. If we could do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon, Vice Chair Dixon, Chair Pahana,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Dixon, I see you messing with your mic there. Are you on? Okay, the minutes are approved.
Thank you. Okay, so number 2, we have the approval of the minutes for November 2nd, 2021.
Commissioner Mendoza, I again move to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do you have a second?
This is Max. I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon, Chair Pahana.
Aye.
So we have 4 and a question mark approved. I think 4 will do it.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to number 3, approval of the minutes for December 7th, 2021.
Commissioner Mendoza,
This is Commissioner
Move to
Krushat. I
approve.
move that we accept the minutes for December 7th.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. May I have roll call vote?
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon, Chair Pahana.
Aye.
So I think what we'll do is afterwards we'll get with Jason and see if he's got the 5th vote to approve in there. But we've got enough without it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So items were moved to the consent calendar for discussion. Doesn't look like we have any. So we'll go right into our public hearing for PC 1840, the 29 Palms Farmers Market Conditional Use Permit Amendment.
Okay. Eli, can you allow me to share? Eli, can you allow me to share my screen? Okay, there we go. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm not seeing you all anymore, but so thank you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Our public hearing case for you this evening is an amendment to PC 1840, That is a CUP for the 29 Palms Farmers Market. The applicant here is Roger Thomas, and I believe Mr. Thomas is on the line if you have questions for him. The request is to relocate the 29 Farmers Market to Freedom Way and Plaza, which we formerly called Project Phoenix. The location is 73551 29 Palms Highway. Land use is a blend of commercial, general, and public. And in the downtown plan, the proposed future land use and zoning is downtown traditional. A little bit of background, as you're all aware, the original location of the market was at Buckland Park in the public parking lot behind there, with also being able to use the Buckland Park Plaza. It has since relocated to Freedom Way by use of a temporary use permit. So that was a temporary permit to allow the transfer to occur. This CUP makes it permanent. The market uses the event space on Freedom Way, formerly known as Yucca Avenue, and it can be closed off to traffic with retractable bollards. Site plan. This is kind of an overall site plan of the Project Phoenix area. And you can see it's kind of bounded by Tamarisk Avenue on one side and Cholla Avenue on the other, 29 Palms Highway there to the north. The area involved in the farmers market and also the event space is highlighted here in red. So that is between Smoke Tree and Tamarisk on what is now called Freedom Way. So it is basically all the area, if you're looking out there today, that is paved with the colored concrete, which is one of our signatures of downtown. And actually, I believe on Thursday, the rest of Freedom Way will get poured too. So the market is available to use all of the space, all of, let's say, or most of rather, Freedom Way to the Project Inn, and then parts of the parking lot for the Paseo on either side. And retractable bollards are located here on the west, here on the north, here on the east, and then there will be bollards on the south here as well. The layout is basically, as you can imagine, just essentially setting up the booths and other things such as food trucks and trailers in the parking spaces. So whether it's perpendicular parking on Yucca Avenue or parallel parking on Yucca Avenue, now Freedom Way, or the perpendicular parking in the Paseo parking lot. And then the, essentially what's currently the travel ways of the aisles is open to, pedestrian activity. This is a photo of the new Freedom Way looking south with the stage there in the background and the community center off to the right and the new cultural center there off to the left. This is a shot looking northwards, kind of at the intersection of those two roads. And then this is a shot looking towards the west as well. So if you haven't gone down and visited, please do. It's a much larger space than what's currently available at the farmers market, which would enable the market to grow and include more vendors. So this market is a certified farmers market, and it offers a variety of fresh vegetables, fruits, eggs, baked goods, also prepared food such as barbecue, tacos, pupusas, coffee, tea. Arts and crafts are included, as well as spaces for nonprofits to set up and provide additional information, and the ability to also host music. And the restrooms that currently serve the community center would be available. The proposed hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And so with that, staff is recommending approval of the amendment to the conditional use permit 1840, PC 1840, and find the project category exempt from CEQA. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you would have.
Thank you, Travis. Does anybody have any questions for him?
Commissioner Mendoza, I do.
Okay.
Does that time of 8 to 1, does that allow for setup and tear down?
It does, but I believe, and Mr. Thomas can speak to this, that some of his vendors actually show up a little early to set up.
Then I would suggest we change the closed hours from 7 to 2 to allow for setup and tear down.
Okay, sure.
This is Max.
And then we just sit there and understand that the setup and that the actual operation of the market will be from 8 to 1. Understanding that at 1 o'clock they're going to do tear down. Is it required that we set it up from 7 to 2? I just don't want to slow it up or have to rewrite this thing.
We can make that modification in the conditions of approval.
This is Max. Are they going to look to do any during the summer, like they asked last time, to do nighttime farmers markets?
Yeah, that's the way we are writing the conditions of approval, to have that flexibility to go to nighttime events when it's really hot outside.
Okay.
Hey, Travis, this is Eli. Roger Thomas is on and is asking questions and putting comments. Would you like me to just unmute him so you could speak directly
Yes.
to this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Roger, go ahead. You're unmuted on our end.
Good afternoon, you guys. Normally, I get to the farmer's market around 6 a.m. and our vendors usually show up by 7. And the market, they start setting up. The market starts at 8. At 1 p.m. we start tear down, and we're usually done with tear down by 2:30. And yeah, it would be good to add this summertime evenings. That way we do not have to go back and redo this later. That way we can get it all at one time and not have to waste the commission's time.
Okay, and are you proposing the same summer hours, Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay.
Rushed.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions to Director Travis at this time from the commissioners? Okay, so if not, then I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And Elijah, do we have anybody that is requesting to speak or raising their hand at all?
Let me see. Any members of the public wishing to speak, please raise your virtual hand now or enter your questions or comments into the chat box. I do not have any questions or hands raised.
Okay, with that being said, I will go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it up back to the commissioners to talk any further if you need to, deliberate, ask any questions, or have a motion.
This is Jim Krushat. I move that we accept the amendment to CUP 1840 with modifications as stipulated.
Commissioner Mendoza, I second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dixon.
Aye.
Yay. Chair Pahana,
Aye.
5-0 approved.
Thank you. And okay, so that closes that part. We'll go to discussion and potential action items. We have none. We're going to go ahead and do study session and then followed by community development director update. So we'll go ahead and jump into our general plan housing element update.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And I just kind of wanted to touch base with you on the housing element, the progress that we've made and where we're at, and kind of give you a high-level summary of some of the detail. It's very detailed, very data-driven type of element. In this case, the applicant would be the city of 29 Palms. The request is going to come before you at a public hearing to update the housing element of the general plan and related components to the safety and land use element, because they touch these other elements. The location is citywide and encompasses various land use districts, residential, commercial zoned throughout the city. So why are we doing it now? Well, state law requires that every 8 years, pretty much every municipality, cities, counties, all update their housing element. The purpose is to assure that the city facilitates the development of housing for all economic and social segments within the community. This update coincides with the release of the new regional housing needs assessment numbers. So you've heard me speak about RHNA before. That's what it means. And these numbers are developed by SCAG. They get a portion from the state to each of these regional COGs, and then SCAG will turn around and apportion it out to its member jurisdictions. So that those numbers include target numbers to develop new housing across all income levels. One issue with this whole sequence, and I really wish the state would change it, is that it doesn't quite coincide with the census, which, as you know, is every 10 years. And it usually takes a year to get data from the census. So it would be ideal if the element was every 10 years, and then we could be totally in sync, but it's not. So we have to rely on various data sources, including the 2019 American Community Survey, data from the Department of Finance, from SCAG itself. And we had to go directly to the Marine Corps base as well to get data. So not all of it is completely jiving and in sync, but it's all pretty close, and we're working with the best data we can. So before I really get into it, I just want to overview some of the challenges to developing housing. And of course, we know housing is a huge issue, not just here in 29 Palms, but across the state, across the country, and across the world, in fact. These pressures are being felt all over. Particularly challenging here in 29 Palms, and I've listed some of the things that provide those limitations. And the number one up there is the lack of a public sewer system. So that limits the density and the amount of new housing that can be developed, especially multifamily housing. And then in turn, because of that, that greatly limits the amount of affordable housing. So, we as a city do not have these sort of large regional or even national housing developers like a Lennar or a Pulte or Richmond American or any of those. And that's because they almost always prefer to work in cities that have public sewer systems. So we're starting with that handicap there. Compound it with the Water Board's regulation that went into effect 2018 of a new 2.5 acre minimum lot size for all new subdivisions if you are an unsewered city. So because we are not sewered, then that falls back to this new 2.5 acre minimum lot size. So even though our zoning may call for and allow for greater density, according to the Water Board's regulation, 2.5 acres is the minimum. Now, the city can reduce that through a program called Local Area Management Program. I believe that's what that acronym stands for. That does require city make investments in drilling a lot of monitoring wells throughout the city. So it's a pretty big effort to go down that path. So those are kind of the two big ones. One thing that I also wanted to say is, back in the boom years of housing up into the 2000s, right before the recession, the city did approve a lot of tentative tract maps. So there were a lot of maps that were approved that had essentially hundreds of lots on them. Many of them have expired or are expiring or soon to be expired. And that's even with the city approvals, which is a 3-year initial approval and 6 years discretionary. Within that time period, they also had 7 years of state extensions. I call them the recession extensions. And then as of last year, there's a new COVID extension, and that's for 18 months. So some of them were set to expire last year, but they got a little bit more breathing room through this COVID extension. So they're alive, but just barely. So once they expire, then they have to go all the way through the process again. Other drivers to increase housing costs, of course, include the increasing home values, which we all know have dramatically increased. So definitely more difficult to purchase, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. Even with the lower interest rates, the prices and the value of the homes have skyrocketed. So, it still takes more to purchase. And then I also included the impact of short-term rentals, because that does impact the availability of housing that is available, to the community. Some other drivers include construction costs, and we all know about the supply chain issues, especially with materials. I think we got pretty lucky within Project Phoenix. We didn't experience too many of those, and we were smart. We ordered way ahead when we needed them. And then labor, and of the two, labor is the one I'm most concerned about. I think eventually the supply chain will get caught up and sort of fix itself, but labor is a big one. There just are not enough people, especially young people, going into the building trades. So, even with the approval of all these houses, are we really going to have enough people to build them? Regulation, of course, is increased quite a bit. There are development costs for anyone building new houses, including the entitlement process, which is engineering, studies, CEQA, and those add to the cost of each house. And then with that is changes in the building code, and then it include the solar requirement, the Title 24 energy requirement, and then things like the earthquake resistance. So all these are impacting the housing costs. And then locally, of course, we have our own standard infrastructures for streets and curbs and gutters. Some factors leading to lower cost is, despite all of that, 29 Palms still has lower land costs relative to other Southern California communities. So, look at Zillow or Trulia or some of those websites, and you can still find lots for $25,000 that are buildable. That's quite a bargain when you compare to even communities down in Coachella. The other thing that the city has is hundreds of vacant lots. So these are lots and currently platted tracts, so they don't have to go through an entitlement process or subdivision. They're already platted, already recorded, have been recorded for a while. So the applicant would just need to submit a building permit. And we have those really all over the city, Hanson Tract and Chocolate Drop and downtown, just everywhere. Our fees as a city are relatively low compared to other communities in Southern California. So right now we have a fees in lieu of, but that's going to be replaced, I believe, by a road impact fee. And then there's the school impact fee. So you compare us to some other SoCal communities, and they may have 2 road impact fees. They may have a local one, but also one issued by the COG, stormwater management fees, library impact fees, a whole lot of other fees on top of that. Some other things, influencing the housing market, and these are really the mandates. The state, as you know, had passed a whole slew of housing legislation last year and the year before. It looks like it will happen again this year. And it's hard to change our development code to keep up with it. But some of the major ones impacting is basically allowing a accessory dwelling unit on any single family lot. So we did allow them before, but with some greater restrictions and regulations, and the state basically, throughout said, no, you got to allow them. With some caveats, of course, they have to be supported by septic and things like that. And then most recently with SB 9, duplexes are allowed on single family zone lots. So we consider a duplex per our code to be multifamily, but the state says you would allow them on single family lots. And then also what's coming is an increased density bonus for affordable housing. So we already had that in our code before. We could go up to 20%, 30% in some instances, but that's going to be increased to 50%. There's also more funding for housing and affordable housing and homeless housing. $4 billion bond was passed a couple of years ago, and so that funding is starting to come to the community. And then I would say this now, when I'm out talking to members of the community, there's a lot of support for affordable housing. And I mention that because I've worked in other communities where there was not as much support, and you would have, maybe an established subdivision did not want an affordable housing project moving in next to them, and they were very vocal in their opposition. So I don't see that in 29 Palms. So in order to meet that requirement, we have plenty of land that's zoned properly. So we have plenty of land that has the multifamily zoning at the 8 units per acre or the high density residential at the 20 units per acre. So that exists. So it's not a problem with zoning. It all comes back to infrastructure. So we can easily accommodate the 1,500 units that includes the RENA numbers over the next few years. A little bit of demographic data, pulling this from census data. We are, as of 2019, we're about 26,100 and some. Now in 2021, I think we're closer to 28,000. So that's kind of a good number. But when we create these reports, we have to lock the numbers in at a certain time, have the state review it, even though we might get some updates, we have to lock it in at some point. Point in time homeless count, as of in 2020, we had 45 total homeless in the city, 17 sheltered, and 28 shelters. So we are about to do that count again. It was delayed because of COVID, but typically we run 30 to 40 homeless when we perform the count. Could be higher this year, given all the economic factors going on. And then, sorry, real sensitive mouse here. Okay. Housing units and housing growth. We've basically got about 9,700 housing units in the city, and that breaks down into these categories. So starting with single family detached, about 5,800 of those, and then moving up through multifamily, different sizes, and mobile homes. So one thing that's been a little bit confusing is how we name housing between us, what our code says, and how census describes it, and even how the base describes it. So, to us, single family means truly single family is detached home but under the census, you can have single family attached. So that includes, things like row houses, there's some duplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, and it all comes down to how they're built. So if they've got certain factors, like they were separated from a ground to roof wall, have separate heating systems, separate meters for utilities, no units above or below, then it could be classified as single family attached. They missing any one of those, then it becomes single family and becomes really essentially a multifamily type of unit. So it's a little bit confusing, but hopefully we're all speaking the same housing language now. So we wanted to do a deeper dive, and we reached out to McAxie, and they gave us this data here that we have, or they report, and this was of July 27th. So we go back today, we're going to get different numbers. As you all know, troops rotate in and out of the base. So, but we were actually pretty close in our original estimate. So they're reporting about 11,800 persons living in military housing. On main side, the base, 10,700, and they're broken down into these categories. Off base, about 1,100, again, broken down to these categories. So, a total population of active duty living in military housing is around 11,836. So what was surprising to me when I got this data is how many are living in barracks and student dormitories. So that, is about 6,500 people. So out of a population, city population, 2,800, 6,500 is pretty significant. An actual count on the housing on base, they said they have 1,600 broken down as such between the detached single family, what we would call detached, and the multifamily, and then off base 600. Housing tenure, and the reason I threw this slide in is, and folks say, and with good point, that the military often skews our number. And it's true, the military base does skew the numbers. And so if you remove, say, the military housing from, owner occupied versus renter occupied, then our home ownership increases to 43%. But, if you look even at our population pyramid, most cities' population pyramid is, well, back in the old days, it was a real pyramid. Now it's more straight up as we all get older. But if you look at 29 Palms, it's got this big sort of jump on one end of males 20 to 25 years old. And then it kind of normals out, at the top. So just another effect of the base. Permits, so you can see from these numbers, we're not, certainly have not issued a lot of housing permits, recently, really since the recession, really put a damper on things. And we've had some years where, 0 or even 1 permits issued. Now that is starting to pick back up. We're probably looking at 20 to 30 permits this year, I think, but that's far below what we would need to meet the RENA numbers. So that's one thing that's a real challenge. So here are our RENA numbers. We're allocated 1,047 units, and this is over an 8-year period from today, this year, 2022 to 2029. Of those, these are the units that would be dedicated to low income, very low income, and extremely low income. The moderate income and above moderate incomes are the majority, but there's a certain percentage that is required to be fall within these categories. And they're based on the average median income, family median income. So, but what that would mean if you do the math is we would need to build, 130 units each year, 44 of which would be affordable to meet that goal. It's kind of how things break down now. We do have the majority of households that are low to extremely low if you add up all three of these numbers, slight majority, and then less that are moderate to above moderate. And then this is the definition of what extremely low is, and that's below 30% of the average family median income. And then 30 to 50% for very low, and then low 50 to 80%. So building affordable housing. So these days, very rare for the private sector to do it on their own, given all the costs. So a lot of times, and I put almost always, it requires some sort of government subsidies to be financially feasible. Now, a lot of people say, okay, well, that's great. You just put together a project and you submit and apply for a loan, and you get it and you build your housing. Well, not quite that simple. Most of these projects, involving more substantial size, substantial number of units, are very complex in their financing schemes. So they typically involve a mix of these four items, financial instruments. So starting with vouchers, we're all familiar with Section 8 vouchers, help make up the difference between your median income and the market. There's also veteran assisted supported housing vouchers as well. Tax exempt bonds, and this is one of the things that's most attractive to have private developers pursue an affordable housing project as the tax exempt bonds. These only happen certain times a year, sometimes once a year, so you have to line up usually a year or two before. There are grants and loans from the state and in some cases the feds through various programs like the agricultural programs. A lot of them come with strings attached, of course. And then from the city's point of view, there's often an in-kind contribution. So that can be outright land, which is typical to in-kind, but also improvements. It could be something like street improvements. So typically any project has several of these financial instruments to be feasible before it can what they call pencil out. And the other point I would want to make is family housing competes best for grants and loans. We talked a lot about senior housing projects. We got a lot of feedback from not just developers and several of them, but also the county saying you're more competitive if you include families in the mix, because that's where the demand is, especially female-headed households, makes you more competitive. So some of the city's efforts, just kind of recap those. Many of you know, but I'd just like to reinforce for the public purposes. The city did submit and was awarded a home key grant. This was specifically targeted for homeless persons. And we are looking or was approved to purchase and renovate a quadplex on Elm Avenue to begin to house some of the homeless. There's also the 3 acres behind City Hall for affordable housing. That is appealing because it's right near county social services for one, library, and of course the city. Getting ready to start working on that project. It does require some rezoning that we're doing through the downtown plan. And I put in a number of 50 to 80 units as potential. that will get solidified as we work through the process. And they look at how many of the units would go to low, very low, and extremely low incomes, and that often determines your grant loan mix. We still have land in Project Phoenix for what we designate as workforce housing. Kind of made sense to do workforce housing there, so folks that are working downtown would have a place to live, close to work. Typically at the below median income, but not extremely low as workforce. And then before the whole COVID, latest COVID wave, we had scheduled talks with Habitat for Humanity. If you're familiar with that organization, they do build homes, affordable homes for lower income people. Often the owners will contribute some of their labor as in-kind contribution to building the house. So we think there's probably a good fit for Habitat up here in 29 Palms. Streamlining effort. This is the thing the state rather requires more and more for the cities to do, is remove those hurdles, obstacles for developing housing and developing housing quickly. And a lot of it we already do. We already have a quick turnaround for plan reviews. Our building and safety department is really efficient. And rarely does it take 2 weeks. We usually have comments back before then. Recently, this past year, we've got our online portal for digital submissions. So, back in the old days, you had to physically come to City Hall. You had to drop off 3 paper copies and all stamped and all of that kind of stuff. And now you can just go online and submit it digitally. And we can review them digitally and get comments, corrections digitally, pay for everything digitally, and issue the permits digitally as well. So that was one of the things that kind of came out of some of our COVID funds, was to allow for this online submission. And then this is actually already in our general plan, but I just want to make the Planning Commission aware of this. So because I think the state's probably going to likely increase the number. So right now, if you are developing a project with 24 or less units, that's an ministerial approval, which means it would not go through the Planning Commission for entitlements, okay? You know me, I try to be very transparent for any new development or major expansion, bring it all to you. But the state is saying, eliminate that hurdle to make the housing easier to build. So you probably see some housing projects that will go up, but that's because they fall within this criteria that you haven't seen. Right now, 25 or more goes through our typical entitlement process. Again, the state could change that this year. So I'll just kind of close with sort of the next steps. The state is reviewing the draft element now. We had a call with them last week, we'll be getting a letter from them. And they did not have a lot of comments, certainly very many negative comments on it. They kind of understand our situation here. Being an unsewered city, they see that we're making, an effort. There were a few things they wanted to update, like more recent housing cost numbers and things like that we will include. And then also complete the CEQA as part of it. So that's kind of an overview of the housing element, and I would be happy to take any questions that the commission has.
Thank you, Travis. I don't have any questions. Did anybody have any questions for Travis? We'll start with Jim. Just got to remember to,
Questions, outstanding briefing though.
Yeah, thank you. Max?
I don't have any questions, but that was a lot of good information. I wouldn't mind getting the presentation in an email.
Sure. If you could add that
Sorry, go ahead, Leslie.
I was just saying if you could add me to that email too.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it to the full commission.
Okay, thank you. And Mendoza?
Excellent presentation. I have no
Everybody,
comments.
Travis.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Dixon?
Definitely great presentation. I have nothing to add or any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to our community development.
Leslie,
Director?
the public,
Yes.
this is allow the public to ask questions or make comments on the housing element. Yeah.
Okay. If any members of the public wish to speak, please raise a virtual hand or enter your questions or comments into the chat box. I have no hands raised and no questions or comments. Oh, excuse me. One just came in.
Okay.
Let's take a look at that. Oh, it's just a response asking about the decks from a Sharon St. John asked earlier if the decks are going to be made available in the minutes, and I did reply that this is being recorded and will be presented on YouTube, and she replied, thank you.
Right. And I'd be happy to upload this slide presentation to on the city's website under the housing element where we have all the other documents as well.
Okay. I have no other questions and no other hands raised at this time.
Eli,
Okay.
can I ask for the record who it was that made that comment?
Yeah, it was Sharon St. John, but you're going to get a copy of this at the end of the meeting. I'll send you all the analytics with all the registered info.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for reminding me I had to open that study session up open to the public, so I appreciate that. And now we can go back to Travis with some updates.
Okay, so I'm really excited now. We are putting the finishing touches on Project Phoenix. Really kind of the last little bits, installing street signs, and there's a little bit of paving that needs to happen. Hopefully the EV chargers get installed this week as well. So we're really kind of wrapping things up. We'll have punch lists both for both of the structures, but we've already developed them. They're taking care of the punch list items. It was really great to see. I went down there a couple of evenings and saw the gym / multi-purpose building in use already. So they're, having their basketball leagues, and it was a great sight seeing the families and all their kids there playing basketball in this brand new facility. And again, if you haven't seen it, please do. We will be giving tours, so that leads me to the next thing. There is the State of the City presentation February 9th. That's a Wednesday at 5:30. And it will be in the Joshua Tree National Park Cultural Center building. So we have a State of the City each year. It's usually in December, but we postponed it this year because we knew that Project Phoenix was about to be completed. So we're trying to arrange for tours to happen before that, like around 4:30. And so you can get the tour and then go and listen to the State of the City. The big grand opening, final is March 12th. That's a Saturday. That will be really an all-day event, but the grand opening portion is from 10 to 2. So there's going to be a little overlap with Rogers Farmers Market in the morning. And then in the evening, the Downtown Business Association had planned some events, including some concerts on our new stage there. So should be a full day of events. Still working on the downtown specific plan. There were some delays on our consultant, mostly COVID related. Hopefully we will get something really soon, and I want a complete document, not just certain sections or chapters, but I've asked them, when you send me something, I want the complete document. Granted, we'll still go through edits and changes, but I want the commission and the public to see the entire plan and how it all relates together. This year, two other construction projects, public amenities that we're working on. First, of course, is the reconstruction of the swimming pool at Lucky Park. That is under design engineering right now. And then the Channel Trail, first phase 1. We have submitted to flood control. We've got comments and we're responding to comments now. We hope to get those bidded in the spring, late summer at the latest. Hopefully things go well. Speaking of general plans, I want to also let you know the City Council approved development of what's called a social equity element to add to our general plan. So this is not an element that's required by the state, but it's something that our City Council felt was important enough to include in our general plan. So it will look at things like discrimination and racism and things like that, opportunities for marginalized communities, and all of that will go into our general plan. And then just finally, unfortunately, I have to give you bad news every now and then. We were not successful on our Prop 68 pursuit for Pioneer Park. It really was nothing we had control over. Our average median income was a little higher than competing grants. Not that we have a high average median income, as we just heard, by any means, but all of this is relative to who you're competing with. And then the number of people in poverty was lower than others. So disappointing news, but there was no negative comments about the design, about the public participation process, about any of those. It all came down to these two factors, which were actually computer driven. We didn't have control over them. But we're not giving up. We're going to continue to pursue other funding options. Ideally, we would proceed with the property purchase, since we already have, willing sellers and appraisals and all of that to lock that down. But we continue to look for other sources of funding. There was an EDA grant out there that we're kind of exploring as well. So I just kind of wanted to give you that update. And that's kind of the highlights.
I'm really sorry. I know you guys worked so hard for that. It was probably not an easy thing to get, but I really am looking forward to pursuing anything else that we can to make that come alive. But yeah, I'm really sorry. You guys do such a great job doing that. It was a lot of time spent. So I am grateful that you're still going to pursue maybe some other ways we can make that happen. But yeah, thank you for all the updates. I just have one request. If you could send those, when you send that email with the PowerPoint, if you don't mind including those dates that you mentioned on the 9th and on the 12th, just so that I can make sure I'm tracking those. Okay. And other commissioners, did you guys have anything else that you would like to ask Director Travis, as he just gave us all those updates? Nope. Okay.
Leslie?
Well, yes.
If I can real quick, Jason was not, I was curious if we could get his votes on the approval of the minutes from August 17th, November 2nd, and December 7th, because we did not get him on record for those.
Okay, so for August 17th, I approve. November 2nd, I approve. And December 7th, I approve.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else have anything else before we adjourn? No. Well, welcome to 2022, and here we go, our first meeting in the books webinar, but that's fine. You guys have a great evening, and we will adjourn.
Thank you very
much. All right, Evan, have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.